It's Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company.
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
So if you are just joining the radio station or just turning over to the radio station, we thank you for switching over to us now. That means you did not hear perhaps what just took place. I said that like it was some sort of a major event. But Chris Ballard conducting his end-of-year press conference, the state of affairs for the Indianapolis Colts after this season that has come to an end, and we have talked about and deciphered and autopsied it aplenty and will continue to do so today. Now, let me begin with this. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison is the other voice you hear on this program. It's 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Query and Company is what we call it. And I came in today, got a good night's sleep, felt pretty good, came in today, and we got a lot to be excited about. We have a lot on the horizon to be excited about. The Pacers are still trying to get Rick Carlisle's 1,000th win. Seemingly, they have an opportunity to do that tonight. Well, they certainly have the opportunity. Seemingly a good opportunity because they're in Charlotte, I believe, to take on the Hornets tonight. Indiana football is the story. It's the story. The Indiana football Fighting Hoosiers are 2 wins away from perhaps the most unlikely national championship in the history of major college football. And they're going in to play an Oregon team that, as we talked about yesterday, may be a little depleted. Indiana they are just continue to be a remarkable story. The more you hear about their players and their coach, they're very likable. And for me, I'm thrilled about today and was super stoked and excited because one of the things, and I'm going to get into, and we're going to play you Chris Ballard here in a second. One of the things to me that is interesting about Indiana football, and I think it speaks to not only why it's a huge story, but also the dichotomy of everything going into the ingredients of this unlikely Peach Bowl appearance. I don't mean unlikely for this year. I mean historically. Eddie Garrison, of college teams, basketball or football, in this area that fans would hear about, talk about, whatever, that we talk about on this show. Name one not named Indiana football off the top of your head that is won at a big-time level that would be a topic of conversation throughout the course of their season here.
College program?
Yes.
Or any professional program? College program, you're talking probably like the Alabamas or
No,
Clemson?
locally, of local interest.
Purdue?
Okay, Purdue basketball or football?
Notre Dame?
Either one.
Purdue basketball, Notre Dame
Purdue
football?
basketball. Okay. So Purdue basketball. Purdue basketball goes to the Final Four. We just had this happen a couple of years ago. There are immediately off the top of one's head, when a team goes to that level, you would love to hear from the team that is on the roster. And then if you can't do that, or even to accentuate that, you talk to former players that brought the fan base of said team a lot of joy, and you get their perspective, their insight on what they think is going to happen. And in addition to that, you have fun reliving their glory years at the said school. For Purdue basketball, you could have on, and we did this, Brian Cardinal or Troy Lewis or Everett Stevens or Brad Miller or Willie Dean. There are a ton, Chris Kramer, Robbie Hummel, E'Twaun Moore, Juwan Johnson. There are players all over the place that people go, oh, yeah, for sure. Indiana football is a bigger challenge because for so long that program was so bad, truth be told. I'm not saying the players were bad players, but it just didn't resonate with the Indiana fan base. Pete Stoyanovich would be great. I'd love to have Pete Stoyanovich. He's coaching soccer up in Michigan, I believe. And Trent Green would be great, but he's doing NFL games and whatever else. Antoine Randall is the offensive coordinator for, I believe, the Chicago Bears. So he's a little tied up. But I think, and obviously it goes without saying, that Fernando Mendoza now puts his place as the greatest football player in Indiana history based on the fact he's their only Heisman winner. But the guy that should have won the Heisman and I think has been the face of Indiana football, the only to have his number retired by the university, the very first number retired at Indiana University, Anthony Thompson joins us on the program today at 1 o'clock. And I was pumped up about that. I was excited about it. I talked to him, super cool dude. And I look forward to talking to him and talking about this run for Indiana. And I was in a good mood. I came in, I got plenty of sleep. I was in a good mood. And I'm not going to lie. The Chris Ballard press conference, of which a lot we're going to play for you, kind of put me in a bad mood. Now, Eddie, you were here. You heard it. Does that say more about me than anything else that for some reason, of which I can't necessarily completely explain, it kind of put me in a bad mood?
Not really.
Here's why it put me kind of in a bad mood. Yesterday, I had to be down on the south side. I had an appointment on the south side. I was a little bit early. And so I was a little bit early, and I'm like, you know what? I drove all the way down here. I got like 20 minutes to kill. And I literally was on County Line Road. And I said to myself, I'm going to walk through Greenwood Park Mall. It's been forever since I've walked through Greenwood Park Mall. I don't know that I've ever walked through Greenwood Park Mall. I grew up a North Side guy. Castleton was my mall. I've made no bones about the fact. I've said on this air, Christmas time, I go walk through Castleton. Yeah, there's nobody there. None of the stores are left. But it reminds me of Christmas as a kid. I can hear the Salvation Army bell. I can see the Santa booth. I like it. The lights are up. So yesterday, I made a bad mistake by walking through Greenwood Park Mall because it was terribly depressing. Nothing against Greenwood Park Mall. It's the week after Christmas, so nobody's in there shopping because everybody's done. Seeing teddy bears that are on discount because nobody bought them makes me sad. But more so, it made me sad because I walked through the mall because I'm trying to reawaken something that was a fun period of my life. I'm nostalgic about it. And I'm walking through and I'm seeing that the structures are the same. The play turtles that you can climb on if you're a kid are the same. The food court is kind of the same. But the vibe is just different. And it's kind of sad. And it just felt like I was in there trying to recapture and go through something, expecting it to be new and improved and different and energetic, but in reality, it was all just kind of the same in optics. And that's what I felt like listening to Chris Ballard's press conference. I'm telling you right now, I could play for you. We literally could do an exercise on this radio program where I say, I'm going to play for you a clip from Chris Ballard, and I want you to tell me if it's from 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, or 2025. Now turning 2026. We'll begin with this. I thought going into it that what I was going to hear from Chris Ballard, and I have nothing personally against Chris Ballard. I think he's a decent human being. I don't know him personally, but I've heard he's a decent guy. I think people, for the most part, like him as a person. But I think that there is, at times, an arrogance as an administrator. But I really was curious what was going to be said to start the press conference, but I assumed that it was going to be, and I was kind of hoping it wasn't, but I was assuming we were going to hear something along the lines of like, look, you know what, this was frustrating. This wasn't good enough. I still have the juice in me. I'm still dedicated and committed. I want to get this right. This falls on me. This is my fault. We came up short, but we had a couple things that that went our way, and then they didn't. And so I still have the fire. But look, guys, look, no excuse. Look, he says look a lot. We all have our crutch words. I do too. His is look. So I said that thinking, okay, I wonder if he's going to come out and just say, guys, listen, and gals, I am privileged to have this job. And I know a lot of people think that I shouldn't have this job, and that's hard. It's hard to look in that mirror. But the reality is I do. And here's why I know people are upset, and here's what I'm going to do to make good on that. Here's what he said right off the top when he was telling Carly Ursay-Gordon that, yes, in fact, he still has juice in the game.
I told her unequivocally, I have not lost my shimmer, juju, or confidence, or whatever you want to say it is. Even through all the struggles we've been through, I feel like we can still get this team to a place where the city is proud of it.
Okay. Not a bad statement. Pretty similar to what we heard last year. Literally could have been the same one from last year, right? But there were some things that came their way. One of the things that Chris Ballard has always been open about is the fact that it is a challenge to create depth on a roster in the NFL. Because you know that things are going to happen to your franchise, things are going to happen to your players, things are going to happen to your game plan. What does Mike Tyson always say? Mike Tyson always says, everybody's got a game plan until they get punched in the mouth. And sounds to me like Chris Ballard, once again, was aware of the fact and didn't want to use the fact as excuse that there is always adversity in the National Football League.
Like the team you start out with in August is never the same team in December or January. It's not. And we've got to do a better job from a personnel standpoint of making sure we have, enough depth and solve problems along the way. I mean, there's going to be adversity in every season. There just is. It's the NFL. It's a hard league. It's hard to win. And things are going to happen. And you've got to find ways to be deep enough and have enough talent on the roster that you can still win games. We've got to evaluate everything. We were 2-7 in one-score games. That we got to flip that trend. There's things in 2 minute that we have to look at because we were giving up too many scores at the end of halves, and that's something that's got to be corrected. So those are all areas that we're going to delve into. I'm not going to sit here and say I have the answers right now, but we're working towards that.
Okay. So now we're starting to get into, I've seen this movie before. We got to flip that on what happens at the end of games. We didn't finish strong. We're right there in games, but we're not making the right plays down the stretch. And then comes the part in the movie where the guy that you start to feel bad for because, oh, golly, shucks, like these bad things are happening to the team he's building. And then he stands up and he shows you this humility of, you know what, it starts with me. And he puts forth this accountability. It starts with me here. And that's what he had to say as we moved along, and the fact that he was willing to say, look no further than right here.
Like, it starts with me, and until we win big, win a division, go far in the playoffs, there's going to be doubt. That's real. I don't run away from that. I don't shy away from that. But here, let's just take offensively. I thought Shane and the staff we were tremendous. I mean, through the first 11 games, I want to say we were ranked 1 yards, points, and EPA. And then if you really dig deep into it, like over the last 50 years, I think we were in the top 8 of all-time offenses in those areas, all right? So offensively, we drafted every player but Daniel Jones. So there's some positive there. There's some definite positives to build upon. I do think we need to help the defense out more. I think our age showed a little bit. And we've got to get younger. We got to get faster, on the defensive side. But to answer your question, until we do, words are words, actions speak louder than words, and wins speak a lot louder than losses.
I can appreciate that. And I promise you I was in a good mood when I came in, and I don't want to be negative Nancy. I don't want to be pessimistic Pete. But I'm going to be realistic Rick. I've heard this all so many times. I've heard it. I literally could have written this out. We could have come in today instead of coming in early to record the Chris Ballard press conference that took place an hour ago and then pull different clips for Colts fans to listen to, which is our responsibility as a radio station. Instead of doing all of that, we could have gotten together last night, gotten a couple of Chicago's pizzas and said, let's cut up last year's press conference. What about the part where he says, we've got to do better? What about the part where he says, that's on me? What about the part where he says, we just need to get more depth at players? What about the part where he says, you know, that's something where we fell short? I can appreciate the humility, except for that, you know what else doesn't look the same at the end of the year as it does in the beginning? Chris Ballard's outlook. Because every year, rinse and repeat at the beginning of the year, it's, guys, there's more here than just a quarterback. Y'all going to ask questions about other people? I mean, look, we like our guys. We like our guys. I got to let them see them play, but we like our guys. It's that at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year, it's, we just got to do better. We got to get more depth. Yeah, I know. I've seen this movie before. Like, this is a Netflix show that I'm looking at it and I'm going, wait a minute, I can't remember. Did I skip the intro here? I thought I saw this episode. But they did have injuries this year, to be fair. How do they handle and how do they navigate the discussion of those injuries? Daniel Jones was the key one. Anthony Richardson as well. Obviously, Mooney Ward. Obviously, DeForest Buckner. Chris Ballard on the health of his team.
I'm never going to use health as an excuse. I mean, I don't think that's, like I said a minute ago, like the team you start with in August, it's never the same team you finish with in January. So, no, I will tell you this. Like, I think our defensive front, we've got to add some fuel to the front. And we've got to get younger. We've got to get faster, unequivocally, on defense. Offensively, we've got to be able to run it when we want to run it. And I will say that kind of when Daniel got hurt, it took away some things we could do from a mobility standpoint, which I think affected it, but that's something we'll dig into.
Let's start this all over. I want you to start a clock for me, Eddie, okay? Or I'll start it right here. I'm going to run this again, and I'm going to start a clock. Okay? Here we go. From the time that he says, and listen, if he stood up and said, you know what, we had a really good football team this year and a really good vision, and injuries absolutely derailed us, and that's all I can tell you. I think a lot of people probably go, yeah, he's probably right. But just like when you start the year by saying one thing, I like our team, and you start the year at the end saying we fell short in a lot of areas, at the beginning of this, it's we're not going to discuss injuries, and then I'm going to start the clock. Start this over again, and I will yell at you, Eddie, when I hear what I heard, and I'll let you know how long it took to get there. This is the exact same clip, Chris Ballard on the health of his team.
I'm never going to use health as an excuse.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think that's, like I said a minute ago, like the team you start with in August, it's never the same team you finish with in January. So, no, I will tell you this. Like, I think our defensive front, we've got to add some fuel to the front. Okay. And we've got to get younger. We've got to get faster, unequivocally, on defense. Offensively, we've got to be able to run it when we want to run it. And I will say that kind of when Daniel got hurt, it took away some things we could do from a mobility standpoint.
Okay, 38 seconds. It took 38 seconds. I'm not going to use health as an excuse, but in 38 seconds I'm going to. And it's a legitimate point he's making, don't get me wrong. But it also comes right on the heels of it. Maybe it's masterful, because at the 38-second mark, I'm stopping the clip to dive into that, which allows me or forces me to just gloss over the fact that he says they've got to add juice to their defensive front. There is no area of this football team that Chris Ballard over the last half decade has worked harder to add juice on than that. You've got to add juice on your defensive front. You sent a first-round pick away for DeForest Buckner. You spent a first-round pick on Kwity Paye. You laughed and looked at the camera and said, we just got the best pass rusher in the draft when you drafted Liatu Latu, who was you had your pick of defensive players. And yet, more on your mind than the injury of your quarterback is the fact that you have a defensive front that needs juice. Now, he did answer questions that needed to be answered, such as he said he expects DeForest Buckner to try to play next year. He said that Mooney Ward, it sounds to me like Shavarius Mooney Ward, they are not going to be surprised if he opts to retire with the neurological issues, and I think everybody needs to understand that and be respectful of that. That's totally legit and understandable. But I want to go to the question that I thought was the question of the presser and the answer of the presser. And it came from James Boyd. And I was bothered by the answer. James Boyd, who you hear on this radio station on the Fan Morning Show, along with Kevin Bowen and Jeff Rickard, and writes for The Athletic, James Boyd asked the question, what has been the highlight? What has been the high point? What's the thing that we all have, that thing that we turn to, that we look towards, right? What's been the highlight for Chris Ballard, and what are the positives that give him the confidence that that juice is still there?
Look, I thought we started out pretty well under some pretty adverse conditions, both in 18, the 1-5 start, the bounce back to go to the playoffs, beat a good Houston team, go and lose in Kansas City. And then coming back in 19, where we had the youngest team in football, lots of space from guys under contract, a franchise quarterback, and then when Andrew retired, it kind of changed the dynamic. And then the rebound in 20 and have a really good football team. 21, I thought, was every bit as good as those two other teams. We were, if you think back on it, we were 9-6. We had gone to Buffalo and beat a really good Buffalo team pretty hard. I think we beat 5 playoff teams that year, and I think it was all kind of in a consecutive, like after the 1-4 start, we got on a pretty good roll. So I do think there are some positives to build upon. And if you look back to 23, we lose a tight game to Houston to win a division. I mean, we've, that's the things that, like, I look back and some of the stuff we've had to overcome, but at the end of the day, we've not finished. I mean, we've had these, in 2021, we're 9-6. We win one of the last 2. We're in the playoffs. 23, we win the last game. We win the division. Last year, at the end, we go to New York and lay an egg. This year, we have a chance, and, we lose. We're 8-2, and we lose 7 in a row.
Okay. Here is the problem. Here is the problem, and I'm going to say it strictly professionally and objectively. The NFL stands for the National Football League. But for years, the kind of joke, if you will, or the statement people say is that NFL stands for not for long. Because in the NFL, literally, the NFL is like dog years. A season's like 4. If you are asked, when you have a record of 70, 78, and 1, when you have seen every team in your division win multiple divisional titles since your franchise last won one, when you have had a playoff win in your tenure in that time, when you are asked the highlights of your tenure, it is really difficult to then list off stuff that happened 7 seasons ago. 7 seasons ago. Do you know how long ago that was in NFL years? That's like 30 years ago. And then you back it up with, but then listen to what happened even 8 years ago when we started. And then 6 years ago. And then within the same question of when you were asked what your high points are, you referenced 3 different seasons as the counter. You didn't even realize you were doing it. But while explaining the areas that you would list as your greatest feats or accomplishments, you subconsciously and subliminally brought up the 3 low points, which were the 3 most recent experiences. That's the challenge. That's what's going to be hard for fans to get excited about when they look at it and they say, so you trended in a direction that by your own admission is the direction the opposite of where things were when you had some juice. And you're stuck in that direction and you feel that what is going to be different? And yes, I know Andrew Luck retired. The rest of the league, you know what Andrew Luck's known for right now amongst players playing in the NFL? The moment where he was doing an interview on the sidelines watching a Stanford football game and there's a fumble and he goes, whoa, ball, and he runs off and then he comes back and he looks like he might be a lit professor. That's what most people know of because it's been that long since he's played in the not-for-long National Football League. I just, in that press conference, wanted to hear more of what the game plan is and how we all know it needs to get turned around. We all know that. Everyone knows that. What is the roadmap? What's going to be different? We've all had those situations where you say to somebody, you're like, no, if you just give me another chance, I promise. And they go, okay, well, what? And you go, well, I've learned. Okay, you've learned, but you need to show me. You need to show me. And yes, maybe it's unfair for me to sit here in January and say you need to show me when the season doesn't get underway until April, May with OTAs and then camp in August, whatever else. There's not a lot they can show right now, except for the last 3 years you said the same thing and then were not able to show me. And I just feel like this is a fan base that is loyal, that is patient, that is financially invested. And while, yes, it doesn't mean that you give your fans rings if they win, and it doesn't mean that the fans get to go down and spray champagne in the locker room, but they want to at least feel that their emotion and their finance is going to a place that is going to give them some stake at some point of the feeling of reward, of progress being not just acted out, but seen to begin with. And a roadmap of that is being laid out. We'll go over plenty more with the Chris Ballard press conference from today, play you more on what he had to say, take your questions on things that we may not have played that you wonder if he addressed. We will do all of that. We will also talk Anthony Thompson coming up 1 o'clock, talking Indiana football today. Zach Osterman, boots on the ground again in Atlanta, we will do. Pacers in action tonight. Tony East joins us to talk about what happens with the Hornets and another guy on a 10-day. We'll get to it next.
Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So this basically summarizes, does it not, where things are not only for the Colts but the Pacers as well?
Yeah, spinning right around. Yeah.
Yeah. Both of them. The Pacers have been sitting on Rick Carlisle's 999th career win now for the last that I checked, 3 months and 7 days, right? Something
Feels
like that?
it, yeah.
Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, javahouse.com, where you can get your Peel and Pour beverages, the amazingly smooth Colombian coffee, Wrangler energy drink, or the liquid science hydration. Just pour it right there in water, and there's your beverage. Tony East joins us on the program from Forbes, Locked On Pacers. Tony, how are you?
I'm great, and I like that you let in with Carlisle's $9.99 because I pre-wrote the story of him getting 1,000, put the quotes in during the NBA Cup break. That was almost a month ago now. It's been crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say, and at this point, if you have player comments in there, you got to go back and adjust because some of them are probably gone, right?
TJ McConnell said in December instead of just said, yes.
That's right. Okay, let's begin with this. For what it's worth, I saw you had yesterday. I was a little confused by it. It's relatively inconsequential, admittedly, but the wave of Tony Bradley and then the call of, well, maybe actually, hang on, can we talk? What's behind all of that?
Yeah, money savings, basically. If you pretend right now that in the next 10 days, because he already signed his 10-day, the best trade ever for the Pacers falls into the Pacers' lap, but it requires them to waive somebody to do it. If they waive Tony Bradley on his 10-day, they have very little financial, impact by doing so. If they had him on his old deal and they had to waive him, in the same situation, they would have had a lot more of a financial impact. So it just saves them a lot of money. And if they, give him another 10-day after this 10-day, gets them basically all the way to the trade deadline and maximizes all of that flexibility. So, it's just all about money and options because they're less than a month from the deadline. They got to figure out what they're going to do at some point, and if they don't have to lose any players but can save money to do it, seems like a win-win to me.
Realistically, of the roster you look at right now, and if you're talking about Tony, the assumption that you have everyone healthy, okay? So once Halliburton's back, once Toppin's back, once all of that, right? You're looking at the players that we have right now. How many odd men out would be how many people? Not names, but how many individuals would they have to make? 2 of them would have to go?
Yeah, 2 or 3 for sure, I would say.
Now we'll go names. The 2 or 3 that you feel like are just roster fillers right now, and even though they can pretend there's future, the reality is once you're back fully healthy, they probably get a parting gift.
Yeah, they don't need 4 centers, right? Like, now that Micah Potter looks like a player, you saw him courtside, right? Like, he's an energy giver, too, for a team that really needs it. They probably won't need Tony Bradley once Isaiah Jackson is eventually back healthy, so I'd imagine that's one of the few guys that you'd say is not going to be around. But right now, Isaiah Jackson does have a concussion. This is a long one, by the way, so all the more reason to stick with it. I don't know if there's anybody else that I can immediately point to and say that should be one of the players who isn't playing. There's just a lot of guys who are currently getting minutes that certainly would not when those guys are back, and that's just a lot of fluff at the back. Like, not all of Furphy, Shepard, and Walker can play when the team is fully healthy. This Cam Jones or Ethan Thompson decision they've made for the last spot in the rotation, neither of those guys would play if they were fully healthy. I don't want to say that those guys shouldn't be on the team necessarily because a lot of the names I just said are young guys, certainly, but not in the mix for actual real minutes, all those guys, if they had Halliburton and Toppin and everybody else available right now.
Cam Jones is an interesting one. People have asked me this. I will defer the question to you. I know in the beginning there was injury there. Is he not on the floor now just because of rotation and lost time because of the injury, or is he in fact still injured?
You can see him in the games. He's got this big pad on for his back, right? And, with injuries like any back thing, as we saw with Halliburton a few years ago, it takes kind of constant management. I don't know if that's the reason that he's not playing, though. Who did they play? The Spurs. When they played the Spurs, they put him in the second half after Mathurin got into foul trouble, and he came in and, credibly guarded De'Aaron Fox and moved pretty well and was kind of additive in 10 minutes, right? He is producing okay enough when he actually is on the floor. I think Rick, for a lot of his decisions of late, has kind of just chosen the guy that he thinks gives them the best chance to win or fits the matchups the best. He said Jay Huff started over Micah Potter in their last game. because of matchups, which is not related to your Cam Jones question, but does certainly tell that he is still searching for the best fit in any single moment of who he thinks gives the team the best chance to win at that instance. And so if he thinks Cam Jones can actually help them, he'll put him on the floor. And he has actually done that when given chances. But there are a lot of chances where he's not giving them the best chance to win. There will be a time this year, though, where they just have to play him every game. Like, there'll be no other choice because they need to see what they have in him. And he's been fine. Despite not playing for 2.5 months to start the season, he's actually been fine in his minutes so far.
Tony, where would you assess the mental aspect for Pascal Siakam?
Yeah, it's brutal for everybody at some point, and you gotta. It's really interesting seeing these guys around each other because a lot of the times they still feel like not last year's team necessarily, but just like in general a tight knit team that knows what they're capable of, and they like being around each other, and they do have a lot of enjoyable personalities on their team, and they go through their pregame routines, and everybody's smiling and ready to play, and then at some point in the game they all look like they've never met before. And this is the worst thing ever. And then they wear their hearts on their sleeves at postgame, and they're, all upset because they've lost 13 games in a row. And that's natural. Like, that's what losing does to teams. But Siakam is the guy that's like, this sounds rich because they're 6-31, but like he is producing all-star stats. Like, his stats are better in the NBA this year. It's like him and 8 guys. That's it. And they're so bad that there's no chance he's going to be an all-star, to be clear. But like, he's been awesome, and he's doing everything he can. And there's like 3 or 4 times a game where he gets frustrated because somebody does the play wrong or cuts at a horrible time and it messes up his drive or messes up a defensive coverage. And not that he's like immune from mistakes, but for a guy that for his whole career winning as the center, and I don't even mean that as like everybody claims they want to win. Like, how often I've heard Pascal Siakam say on the record in a postgame presser like about winning, and he's like, if we win, we all get paid. Like, how great is that? Like, he wants it for everybody to be what it's all about. And part of why I think he wanted to be done with Toronto is the winning wasn't happening anymore, and it felt like perhaps a faraway thing to him. And he came here, and they were immediately very good. And they're not winning at all. In fact, they're winning a historically low amount right now in franchise history. And that hurts everybody, but it really hurts somebody like that. And I think the hard part for a lot of these guys is they kind of realize they have to take it because they know they can be good again next year. So you just got to wait it out, but that means you have to deal with it now. And it sucks to have to do that. And there's no sight of a win anytime soon. They keep blowing every game with one bad 8-minute stretch, but they just kind of have to take it. And that's not fun for anybody, even if it is, maybe not more upbeat than you'd expect from a 13-win team, but just like a group that is still very complimentary and positive of each other. They just can't beat anybody, like literally anybody right now.
Tony, let me ask, we've not really gone over this in a while. I haven't asked you this in some time, truthfully. Tyrese Halliburton, we know, obviously, and look, is his difference literally that between a half a win from an NBA title and a 6-win team? There are other variables there, right? But he clearly is very important. Where do things stand on the timeline of his health and rehabilitation?
I have wondered how much of this can be attributed to him because, even last year they were 4-5 without him or whatever it was. Like, looked like not a good team, but a real team. So there's obviously so much more going on than just his absence, and they lost their starting center too, and they've always been missing someone else, whether it's McConnell, Toppin, name every player on the team. James Johnson's gone. Their coaching staff's different, right? There's a million factors to talk about. As for Halliburton's health right now, the last time he did an update was on Prime last month, but like we can see now since then, the thing he does now that he wasn't doing when he did that interview is he's doing actual, sometimes, not every game, a pregame workout. Like it's just shooting and kind of moving around. He's not like looking explosive or running really fast or dunking all the time or anything, but that's actual basketball activity in a way that hadn't been shown before, and the shots were going in. And working through that part of this now of getting your body back to trusted, getting your body back to the size that you want to play at. You can't do a lot for months. Like your body shape is going to change a little bit. So I think he's at that kind of stage now where he's got to add strength to that leg again and get used to playing basketball again after such a long time off. So still not like, I don't know what you want to call close, playing in scrimmages or whatever, but certainly progressing and able to actually like dribble and shoot a ball on a court in a uniform in a way that was not even a thing last time we heard from him.
Johnny Furphy getting increased minutes. One would assume that those are minutes that Jarris Walker would still be getting also to develop where he needs. Do we pit those two against one another in that, and what do you see from Furphy?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible to pit them against each other. If you want to say that their rotation from the finals team is going to be similar next year, but maybe like minus Ben Matherin plus someone who steps into Ben Matherin's spot, like the two guys would be Walker or Furphy. Who's it going to be in theory? And, Furphy has just, he just is so tenacious and I can't even describe it. Wily, like it's almost like when he plays, he's like asked to be a wilderness survivor, and he's so good at like, okay, I'm gonna find a rebound here, I'm gonna shut my guy down there, and so even if his shot's not falling, he just finds all these one possession little ways to impact his team, and is I think a better fifth option right now for the starting spot, which is why he's getting I think a little bit more burn than Jarris. Jarris can do more things. He's a little more capable of the bounce. He's a better shooter than Furphy. But he can't, it's harder for him to be that far down the pecking order and still have an offensive impact, if that makes sense. But Furphy's been really good recently. I mean, he just had one of his better games as a pro with the 11 boards against the Cavs, and had an awesome defensive rep on Darius Garland and made a three. I think he was 4 for 5 from the field in that game. And 5 shots in 30 minutes is why he'd be the fifth starter. He doesn't require the ball or that much offensive interaction to be impactful. So I think that's sort of why the minutes are breaking out the way they are, but I think it's reasonable to say what you just said. Yes, it could be one of them cracking that spot. Now, obviously, they could draft somebody top 3, and that would be the person who then obviously gets a rotation spot. But it's totally reasonable to say, is it one or the other? Now, it could be both on the team, and neither are playing, but they're auditioning for something certainly in a team that's kind of not in flux, but still figuring out who is going to do what at the moment.
Pacers and Hornets tonight. Game tips. What time does the pregame coverage begin, Eddie, when you've got to come back in with your little bag of chips?
6:30. I mean, there's a board right in front of you, Jake, that's got all of that there for you.
I understand. It says Pacers at Hornets Thursday.
It doesn't put 6:30 on there?
I don't see versus Heat Saturday at 7 p.m. That one it says pregame at 6:30.
I must have forgotten that. I'll take my snide comment back then.
Tony, anything you want to add with that?
Yeah, Jake, come on, read the number that's not there.
That's exactly right. All right, Tony, appreciate it, man.
Take care, guys. Enjoy the Ballard presser today. I've seen some fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. Listen, did you ever, before we let you go, Tony, did you ever hear a kid's song when you were younger? I'm Henry VIII, I am. Henry VIII, I am. You ever heard that song?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, when it comes, they do, it's like a kind of a kid song, sing-along song. Then it comes back, the music plays, and then he says, second verse, same as the first. And that's kind of the story of the Chris Ballard press conference, just so you know.
You have a
verse,
future in PR.
same as the first. I do what I can. All right. Talk to you soon, Tony.
Thanks, guys.
Tony East joining us on the program. Anthony Thompson, Indiana Great, coming up in just about 13 minutes.
Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I can recall, and we'll play you more from Chris Ballard coming up over the course of the show. If you're just joining us, he had his press conference.
Where have you been?
About 11 o'clock this morning, and basically said, look, there were some nuggets that we need to get to also, where he talked about defensively in particular, he thinks they need to get younger and faster. I mean, there were some players that, Jermaine Pratt, I think yesterday sent out a post kind of indicating that this is probably it for him. But, Zaire Franklin, does that not bode well for him when he said that they still need to get pass rush? And I'm thinking, yeah, but we've kind of gone over that and put literally every single – I mean, it would be impossible for any general manager to know every single aspect of a team, I think. Some were great at putting together quarterback combos or offensive things, or, there's always going to be an area that you just swing and miss. And for Chris Ballard, it's pass rush. Literally, he has tried every which way but Tuesday to get a consistent pass rush and continues to fall short in that regard. You know what I mean? So that was something that, he was at least candid about that, I guess. But it definitely just felt kind of like, yeah, I think we've heard most of this by now. I do think that we've heard most of this by now. But we'll play it for you and continue to go over it. Several people have asked me this, and I know that they ask it flippantly. But it is unfortunate that the tenure has gone, or the extensions have gone long enough or to the point where people basically now are saying, like, what is it that, you always hear that joke, right? Who's he have pictures of? What is it that he has against the family? What sort of blackmail? That is all obviously an unfair and probably even irresponsible conjecture to take legitimately, except for that it speaks to the underperformance they have had that then makes what normally is a flippant comment one that people actually begin to look at with a raised eyebrow. Not saying me or you, but the fans in general.
Right, and I also, Jake, to add another element to this of what we saw today in the National Football League of Mike McDaniel getting fired down in Miami, is that it's almost impossible, especially in today's NFL, to retain a head coach but fire their GM. So, like, if you're going to fire one, you got to fire them both. At where things are at right now across the league. And it felt like that there were people, and you especially, Jake, you weren't ready to give up on Shane Steichen yet. So if you're not ready to give up on Shane, then you probably can't give up on Chris either, even though you should have already.
This from Richie. Richie says, it's not conflicting ideals. An explanation isn't always an excuse. Ask yourself if you can see through your disdain to allow this guy to not be overcritical and overanalyze every damn thing he says. If you can, then maybe you're good at the job you have, Jake. I've never said I have a disdain for Chris Ballard at all. Matter of fact, 50% of people in this town say I'm too soft on him. 50% say I'm too hard on him. All I'm saying is, after a while in professional sports, unlike any other walk of life, if you are saying at each season the same thing cost you that it did before, then eventually people are going to question about it. Now, when he says injuries are not an excuse, and then later says once Daniel got hurt, and people are saying to me, yeah, man, his quarterback got hurt. You don't think that's legitimate? I do. But what I'm saying is, I'm not the one that said it's about more than one position. I'm not the one that said that. I'm simply holding to the standard of what the franchise told me, which was you build a roster that is not reliant on one position. And if that's the case, then when that one position gets hurt, you can't come back to me and tell me that that's what derailed your season. It's about more than one player. Listen, I'm just the messenger here. Don't shoot the messenger. Anthony Thompson, Indiana great. IU 2 wins from a title. We'll discuss next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I know that Mike Dumas had a long-standing career in the NFL. I know that Pete Stoyanovich, I should say. I don't know why I said Stoyanovich. Pete Stoyanovich. I know that Pete Stoyanovich had a long-standing career as a kicker in the National Football League, notably with the Miami Dolphins. I know that you have players that broke racial barriers in the Big Ten for Indiana University. And I know that Fernando Mendoza just won the Heisman Trophy. But I think I'm safe in saying that our next guest is widely considered the greatest player in the history of Indiana University football. For that matter, he had his number retired. He is the only at the time to have had that. He is a member of the College Football Hall of Fame. His 5,299 yards rushing when he left Indiana led him to become the runner-up in the Heisman Trophy in 1989 to Andre Ware. I still think at some point I should go to Andre Ware, knock on the door, and say, is Anthony Thompson's Heisman here? And his 65 career touchdowns, the most for any player in college football upon his leaving when he got drafted by the Phoenix Cardinals. Anthony Thompson joins me on the program now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Anthony, how are you?
I'm doing well, brother. Hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate you.
Well, you're aware of all those stats, obviously, right?
Yeah, I am.
You've heard them a few times, right?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt about that.
Let's begin with this. And I do want to talk about kind of some of the foundation you were a part of and the great coaches that you had as well. And, you know, you worked for the university upon your playing career coming to a close. But I'm going to allow you to kind of speak for your teammates, your era, 1986 to 1989. What does this mean for you to see Indiana where they are now?
It is unbelievable and unimaginable that we could be at this state right now and doing what we're doing. Coach Sig, and I call him the Pied Piper, man. And he's got these kids hitting on all cylinders. What it means for old heads like myself is that, we built a foundation under Coach Mallory, and we were a bunch of ragtag, tough guys. And he's stealing us to be tough, and we're going to play. You may beat us, but you're going to come out wounded. And so that was our philosophy. And he really instilled, just the discipline in us to play hard, be hard, and not give up on anything. And I see these kids doing the same thing, and it's just unbelievable what's going on.
I look back on, Anthony, I was just telling somebody, it was always so much fun when Indiana was, when you guys first kind of started getting it rolling a little bit. And ABC would always pick an early October game to do from Bloomington because they like the aerials of the Brown County leaves and all of that. And then you've got this running back that's beating Ohio State at Memorial Stadium or beating, Michigan or whatever it might be, right? And then the darkest day in history in Columbus with Earl Bruce. And so now all of a sudden Indiana's on the map, and you're going from the All-American Bowl into the Peach Bowl, into the Liberty Bowl. You're going into bigger bowl games as you go along. And then, obviously, things went south again with Indiana football, and it got back into that era of mediocrity and obscurity. Was that disappointing and disheartening for you?
Yeah, it really was, because Coach Mallory always said to the athletic directors, we got to keep up. We cannot go backwards. We have to keep up with our facilities, with our recruiting, with the monies that are provided for football. We have to keep up with it. And I think sometimes there was a law in that. But Coach Mallory always mentioned that. And so I think one of the turning points that we really had was with Terry Hepner. I think Hep was on the way of doing some great things. And then that tragic death, the battle with cancer that he lost, that was a tough. And I think that, the program went down from there a little bit. But again, I said, what Sig is doing is just totally just unbelievable. I mean, what I really wish that Coach Mallory was here to see what's going on right now.
And Hepner both, right? Because those are the two
absolutely.
men. And tell me, Anthony, if I'm overstating this, okay? Bill Mallory had this leadership of men. I want to play for this father-like figure characteristic about him that made guys get the most out of themselves. Terry Hepner had a vision of boundaries that needed to be broken through that Indiana could do so long as they believed. And Curt Cignetti kind of seems to have taken a little of both of those guys. And it's like there's a little of both, maybe more Hep in terms of the vision wrapped in, but it seems fitting that kind of the A and the B have finally come together here. Am I overstating that?
You're spot on. I mean, you are spot on. We would run through a wall for, Coach Mallory. When he said jump, we said how high, because we believed in him, he believed in us, and we could, we knew that he cared about us. First as men, as young men, and he wanted to develop young men before football players. And so that's what he did with all of us. And so we're called the Mallory man. And anytime you hear that term, it just takes pride. We take pride in that. And it's just so awesome. And when you look at Terry Hepner, he was a visionary. I mean, he was like the first Pied Piper. I mean, that dude should have been a politician. Okay. I mean, he was unbelievable. And I think Sig, right? I think you're right. He's got a little bit both of them in that, but I think more Terry Hepner than anything. But I'm just flabbergasted with what he's been able to do.
You, after your playing career, Anthony Thompson's my guest, Jabba House Peel and Port guest line. After your playing career, you served as a senior associate athletic director for development for Indiana University. You have recently retired from that position. You retired how long ago from that?
2 years ago.
Okay, so did you get a chance to see, because I'm kind of curious, with Curt Cignetti coming in, it is my understanding, Anthony, and you tell me if this is off base, but Curt Cignetti basically came in, looked around, and said, this place needs a complete culture overhaul, just in terms of this is a facility filled with people that just assume it can't be done, and I've got to pump some juice into that and maybe even be the one to put my neck out there. And there just was this instant infusion. How did you see it from your perspective?
I saw it as this guy he's an assassin. That's first, his first press conference, when he said, Google me, I said, this guy's different here right now. This guy's different. And he knew that he needed to change the culture. He knew that he needed to change the way that the university thought about Indiana football. He knew that he had to change the state and the nation of how they thought about Indiana football. That's one of the first things that he did. And he took on that as a warrior and as a assassin. That guy has ice in his veins, man. When I hear his interviews, it's just like, I would have loved to play for him, because he's just so confident. He's not cocky or arrogant. He's confident what he knows what he can do and how he can lead. He's a leader of young men. And so that was the most thing that really excited me about, one of his first interviews, the first time I've ever heard him. And so, no, he had to change the culture. He had to change the mindsets. Because I guess, we were the losing this university in the country. And so you better come in with your guns loaded. And he did.
And then in terms of the on-field, Anthony, you know the game. You played it. Anthony Thompson, my guest. What about this team has most jumped out at you? And what is the area that might give you concern going into this rematch with Oregon?
The first thing I would tell you this, that the quarterback, Fernando, he's unbelievable. You talking about a leader, you talking about a humble individual, you talking about a guy that his teammates love to play for. I mean, he is unbelievable and very articulate, very just a good person. He's more of a better person off the field than on the field. And so I would lead with that, because if you got a leader like that, people will play. You'll play harder for that individual. I call him. He's almost like a junior Tom Brady. Now I'm not lose those terms loose, but he reminds me of that, because he'll get his team when a play is called. He'll get his team in the right play. He has to change the play. He'll get them in the right play. That's what I love about him. He's has ice in his veins. And so I think you start with that. And I think when you go into this game against Oregon, you got to throw that first game out. That means it's a different team. Oregon's a different team. But the thing about us, we're hitting on all cylinders. So it's going to be, like Coach Mallory would say, it'll be an old-fashioned Donnybrook. And I think Sig will have our team prepared. And we don't make very many mistakes, so we need to knock on wood and keep not doing that. So I'm excited about this matchup. It's going to be a great matchup and a great game.
I've been bitter, Anthony. Anthony Thompson, my guest. I've been bitter for 30. It helped this year to finally exercise the demons of bitterness within me. But when you had 377 yards against Wisconsin, I said to myself, the Heisman Trophy's coming to Bloomington. I mean, it just is. And then there's the Sports Illustrated cover that said 5 for the Heisman. And I'm going to go off the top of my head. I believe it was Emmitt Smith was one of those 5, was he not?
Yeah, Emmitt Smith.
Okay, Emmitt Smith, Anthony Thompson, obviously Andre Ware, who ended up winning it. Major Harris of West Virginia, right?
Yes.
Who was the 5th one? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't recall.
Oh, wait, was it Tony Rice wasn't still at Notre Dame, was he?
Tony Rice, here you go.
Okay.
Good memory.
So those 5. So,
yes.
And then as the race is coming down to it, and I'm working at O'Malley's Food Market over by Cathedral High School, and I'm working in the produce section that day, and I'm listening to the radio, and the bucket game's on, and Indiana's about to lose the bucket, and I'm thinking if they lose the bucket, they don't go to a bowl game, and if they don't go to a bowl game, they don't get a Heisman, and Bill Mallory puts Anthony Thompson in for the kick return to try to put Indiana in position. And in my mind, and each time I rethink this, Anthony, I give you 5 more yards. In my mind, you returned it 92 yards down to the 8-yard line. Now, I don't know that it was that, but it was a hell of a return. Now, take me through the thought process of how you ended up, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you were a return man earlier in your time in Indiana, but that felt like a Hail Mary on ground. Take me through it.
Well, I didn't, the game was winding down. And Coach Mouse, hey, I want Anthony there, to return the ball. And I'm like, I haven't done that all year, And I don't know if I can catch the ball at this point. And so, but I was just so excited about the bucket game, playing the bucket game. I said, okay, we got to do something here. And so the ball kicked directly to me, which I was surprised. I thought they would kick it away. And I run down the sideline and just all of a sudden I was down the right sideline and ran out of room. And if I was a little bit faster, I think I would have touchdown, but we got pretty close to it, and so it was exciting. It was an exciting time. It's like you want the ball, you want the game in your hands. If you're a baller, you want the game in your hands, okay? And so I felt really good about that.
You stepped out of bounds where? Do you remember how close you got? Because in my mind, 8-yard line.
I'm going to say probably 15-yard line, maybe 10 to 15-yard line, somewhere like that.
I'll stick with 8-yard line. You're 8 yards out. Now, I will tell you that, and then unfortunately Scott Bunnell missed the field goal and out of Castle High School, and you guys didn't get to go to the bowl. But I do think still that now. Do you have a relationship with Andre Ware?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you a quick funny story about Andre. When I was administrator at IU, we were playing in Illinois, and they came to our stadium. And Andre Ware was the broadcaster, okay? And they wanted me to do a broadcast. They wanted me to come up and talk with them at halftime, talk about the game and things like that. So we're on national television, mind you, okay? So I'm in with Andre, and I forget the other guy's name. And so the first thing I said on national television, I said, Andre, where's my Heisman Trophy at? Oh, he busted out laughing. It caught totally off guard. And everybody just started busting out laughing. So Andre's a great guy. We're really good friends. And so he just really back then was a really enjoyable time. I never even dreamed about being able to run for the Heisman Trophy.
You should at least get the trophy every other weekend, right?
Right.
In all honesty.
There you go. Maybe we should share.
Right.
Exactly
Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it, right? I mean, come on. Let's be real here. Okay, here's the other thing I was going to tell you, and I'm curious if your thought on this. So my freshman year of college, I go to the University of Kansas, okay? And I'm at the University of Kansas. I ended up transferring back to IU. But I'm at University of Kansas, and on the dorm floor, we have a Tecmo Bowl league, okay? Everybody gets to be a team in Tecmo Bowl. I got like second pick, and I'm like, I'm going to be the Phoenix Cardinals, specifically because I wanted Anthony Thompson on my Tecmo Bowl. I'm fanboying here and telling you this. So I will tell you this. They didn't give you Bo Jackson speed on Tecmo Bowl, but every time that I got the ball down to the 1-yard line, I would hand it to you at 1st and goal, and then 2nd and goal, and 3rd and goal. And usually it was 4th and goal, and eventually the game would let you score. Now, you led the University of Kansas Tecmo Bowl League at the JRP dorm floor, too, with 71 touchdowns in that season, okay? But they didn't exactly give you burning wheels to do it. Did you ever take up any issue with Tecmo Bowl at the way that they had Anthony Thompson profiled?
No, not at all. Anybody would love to have Bo Jackson's speed, by the way. That was ungodly speed that he had. And so, no, I had no problem with that. I was just kind of a power runner, hard-nosed runner. I'm myself after the late, great Walter Payton, his running style, just physicality. I wasn't a burner. I was not a burner. Didn't have great speed, but I was decent, in the things that I perfected and, at my running back craft.
Okay, lastly, before we let you go, two things. Number one, I want to give you the chance here to let our listeners know what being an Indiana football player and notably what being a player that was playing for Bill Mallory meant for you then and what it means for you now.
Playing for Bill Mallory, I'll start with that. Again, he was a leader of men. He taught, I was going to name my first daughter after him, Mallory. But my wife shut that down. I said, no, we talked about naming her Sierra. And I said, oops. And so I wanted to name, and I bet you there's probably 10 to 20 guys that named their children after Bill Mallory. That's how much he meant to us as a father and as a leader and as a coach. And the way I feel now, I'm so proud of what these guys are doing. I'm so proud of the Hoosier Nation, and this is what we've been looking for eons. This is since the 1950, 45 or something when George Taliaferro was playing. And so this is what we've been looking for and hoping for. And now it's happened. You got to picture it. We're pitching. It's like we're living a dream. We're living a dream, man. This is serious. And so it's very exciting.
Well, first off, your plan for the game will be what? Are you going down, I assume, to the Peach Bowl?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I was going to say, you got to be front and center for all of it, right?
Yeah. Oh, I would not miss it.
And then you will be heading to Miami after that, right, to see them hoist the trophy.
Hey, no doubt about that. I'll be on the field that game.
Can you, if they
promise you that.
If they did it this way where they honored you, could you do another one of those, 3-yard leaps into the end zone? Is that still possible?
You get me about an inch away, I might be able to jump over a penny. How about that?
Well, yeah, but if there's a national championship trophy with Indiana's name inscribed on it on the other side, I'll bet you'll find a way, right?
Oh, you better believe that. I'll find a way. I'll conjure up Bill Mallory, and I'll find a way. Trust and believe that.
Well, my understanding is your nickname in high school was AMP, but now, of course, AT is what most people know. Anthony Thompson, the legendary Indiana football player, number 32, will never be worn again for the Cream and Crimson. Anthony, it is a great pleasure to have you on. Certainly enjoy the success. I enjoyed watching you as a player and hope you soak in everything that comes with it. And should they win, we would love to have you back on the program.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your show. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Anthony Thompson joining me on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, one of the legendary players down in Bloomington. And again, his number 32, I believe I'm correct in saying, later when J&B's in the crossover, I can ask for clarification, but I believe his number 32 has been retired sport-wide in Indiana. I don't think any athlete can wear 32 in Bloomington regardless of sport. I could be wrong in that, but certainly he was the first football player to have his number retired at IU. And, it is, when it comes to Indiana football, there's not much I can say about it that hasn't already been spelled out. There's not much you can say about it that hasn't already been, broken down and deciphered and talked about, because there's just not much before that to even discuss. And the one thing and the one storyline, I guess, that I keep going back to is that when NIL and the transfer portal became reality, the overwhelming and overriding narrative from everyone, nationally speaking, was that this was the nail in the coffin to everyone but the elite. This was the Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, Florida State, Oklahoma, Texas, Clemson. This was going to just make the rich the elite, and everyone else was going to be picking up table scraps. And I don't know whether or not other programs can get their turn at the wheel. But Indiana laid the blueprint of it. And we just saw yesterday that Mark Cuban apparently just gave another sizable donation. I would think that the Cook Corporation is also a major player in that. But Indiana University has the largest living alumni base in the United States. As I mentioned yesterday, part of that is because that includes IU Indy. That includes IU Kokomo. That includes IU Richmond. For that matter,
does that include one of Cignetti's first coaching jobs, IU of Pennsylvania?
It does not include Indiana, Pennsylvania. Excellent question, though. Excellent question. And probably one that some would – why not at this point, though, right? Cignetti was there.
Right.
Just as an example, when I went to college, I went to the University of Kansas, and it was a total disaster. I was homesick.
The first time you went to college, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right out of high school. And it was a disaster. I was not mature enough and ready to be that far from home. And I came back, kind of tail between the legs. I was terribly homesick. So my parents said to me, and I give them credit, they said, look, you've got to go back and finish, because if you're going to start something, you made a commitment that you were going to go for a year. So they made me go back second semester, and I did. And then I came home, and I knew I wanted to go to IU, but I didn't have the grades to go to IU. So I enrolled. I took the first semester off of what would have typically been my sophomore year, kind of got things in order for myself, and then went for a semester to IUPUI, as it was then known, IU Indy now. I got in good academic standing, had a good semester. I've always been grateful for the opportunity I got there, and I always appreciated that in that class there were a lot of people that were going back to school that were adults, and I needed that because I needed that structure and kind of the blueprint or the guidance of people older than I. And then I transferred to Bloomington. I was 19 hours from graduating from Bloomington when I decided to go into the workforce, essentially, and did not go back. And it was not until 3 years ago that I decided that, yes, I would go back and finish. And I did it online. And my online portal was through the Kokomo branch. So of the 140 hours that I ended up with, because I had to take some duplicates and whatever else, of the 140, I think, credit hours that I had, something like 40 of them were divided between Kokomo and IU Indy. 100 of them were accumulated on campus at Indiana University Bloomington. My diploma says Indiana University. It doesn't differentiate between which ones. It just says Indiana University. So that's how you get that number, because I'm assuming that Texas, you have UTSA and the different branches of Texas. Probably they only count Austin in that alumni group. But when you have that large a number and you have people that graduated from IU Kokomo or IU Northeast that are IU fans, they're also going to be giving in. So the financial hopper for Indiana University is substantial. And it goes without saying that it certainly helps to have alumni like Mark Cuban that are owners of sports, previously speaking, that have billions of dollars. And the Cook Corporation, which has always had a close relationship with Indiana. Back in the day, in the media guides for Indiana University, at the back of it, when Bob Knight was the coach, at the back it would list what every former Knight player was now doing. And I remember as a kid thinking, like, man, a lot of guys work for this Cook Corporation. And I think Yellow Freight was the other one, which might have been an auxiliary of Cook. And that's because you went to IU, you played for Bob Knight, and if you didn't go back to your hometown or play professional basketball somewhere, if you needed, you got hooked up with a job from the Cook Corporation, which was a friend of Knight's. And I think that still exists within Indiana. It's just a different landscape now in terms of amount, how directly, and everything that can go into it. Back in those days, if you played basketball at Indiana, your one perk, you got free haircuts at Crosstown Barbershop. My apologies if I just admitted an NCAA violation 40 years after the fact.
And if they scored 100, what'd you get? Was it a free burger at McDonald's or something like that?
Yes. That was, especially in the 75 season, people used to love that McDonald's on the extension of from going back on to 37. Yeah. There's a McDonald's right there. I think there was one time where, or if they won by 50, it might have been. I mean, they had different events, different ways that they would do it. There was a time where the simplicity of Assembly Hall is what people loved about it, because you just had the banner that would say CBS Sports or WTTV, and that was it. Yeah. Now, the funny thing is, like most things, a conversation that begins by talking about Indiana football being 2 wins from a national championship naturally segues itself into discussing the basketball program, because that's what it's been for so long.
Yeah.
And I am fascinated by the possibility that this is, in fact, a shift. I mean that. Indiana played, think about this. Indiana played last night.
They did, yeah.
Purdue played last night.
They did,
and we
yeah.
haven't really gotten to either because it's a football theme right now, right?
Both won.
Indiana won resoundingly.
Yep.
And I thought Purdue got really good play from where you least, maybe not least, but where you didn't expect it at the guard play.
Yep.
Especially bridging from the first half to the second. We will get back into that, and Zach Osterman joins us in a few.
and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You know, I think what we saw last night from Purdue, notably, is what we have known, and that is that, you know, you could look at that game and say Washington is not exactly somebody that jumps off the page at you, but great teams and elite teams on nights when maybe it just takes you a while to get going, find ways, and they find different players to come in and play well for you. And, you know, if you look at what Meyer was able to do for Purdue last night, especially towards the end of the first half, bridge into the second, and then you get, at that point, Braden Smith going back again. And Braden Smith last night was outstanding. I mean, 10 of 15 from the floor. He was outstanding, and he is always good at distributing. And if there's a night where Oscar Clough is usually your glass cleaner, and then he's got to step back a little bit, and Trey Kaufman-Renn is the one that overtakes that role. The ability for those guys to willingly, gladly, whatever you want to call it, just kind of step aside and let someone else take limelight, to me, is what makes Purdue so impressive. And the 8-point win last night over Washington. Indiana goes to Maryland. This is not your grandpa's Maryland, admittedly, but still an impressive win for Indiana. Wilkerson shoots the ball well. What do we say about Indiana? When they shoot the ball well, they're going to be good. And if they have nights where the shot is not dropping, in particular, I think their lack of interior depth hurts them a little bit, but that was not the case last night as Indiana beats Maryland. But speaking of Indiana, they are now in the college football semifinals. It is the Peach Bowl, technically we call it. It is the Oregon Ducks they will face.
The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl.
Really?
Yes.
Can't play on Sunday then, right?
That's right.
Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, javahouse.com, where you can get their fabulous product. It is Zach
Osterman
from the Indianapolis Star, who covers IU. Zach, you are back home again, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Indiana is also already down in Atlanta. That goes without saying. Let's begin with this. What exactly is the schedule of events, if you will? Is it different than the Rose Bowl? With each step here, are there even more extenuating things that they need to do and obligations that players can get caught up in, or is it kind of business as usual?
So the Rose Bowl did have a little bit more about it, in particular, more sort of like media day type events. We got, I think, something in the range like 40 to 50 players from both Alabama and Indiana, plus all the assistants, all the coordinators, everybody like that in Pasadena. Here, it's only a small handful of players, both coordinators, and then today we talked to the two head coaches. And then I believe, I'm not positive about this, but I believe if Indiana were to advance, it would be a bit more of a media day type situation in Miami as well. But this being the tightest turn between sort of if you look at the different rounds between games, from the quarterfinal to the semifinal to the final, it I think is probably always was going to be the one that was most sort of abbreviated.
Okay, let's get to also the real story of this game, Zach. Kurt Cignetti and Dan Lanning both had said, look, teams change so much over the course of a season. And I think it was Cignetti was the one that said, these aren't even the same two teams as what we saw in Eugene. Which one's more different?
That's a good question, and one I will freely admit I'm probably not qualified to answer, because I could give you a much more evolved one on Indiana than I could on Oregon, if that makes sense. I do think Oregon, probably in part because of that Indiana game, has cleaned some things up. When I've seen him, Dante Moore has looked better as this season has gone on. I think there's a reason why, neither one of these quarterbacks I think were really quite yet. Maybe Mendoza was starting to enter the sort of number one pick, level conversation when these two teams played in October. Moore wasn't there yet. I think both of these quarterbacks have kind of grown into that sort of potential in the last, basically month to 8 weeks, probably. I think Indiana is certainly running the ball better. I think Indiana's linebacker group, probably starting with that Oregon game, was maybe it feels like that was the day we started to notice how much Indiana was running with 3 base linebackers, even against, 3-by-1 sets and 3 receiver sets, that Indiana was not bothered staying in its 4-3 base because it trusted the athletic level of all 3 of Aiden Fisher, Isaiah Jones, and Elijah Hardy. Obviously, Indiana's down some edge rushers. That was so important in that game. Indiana sacked Dante Moore 6 times. On the other hand, Oregon is very shorthanded at running back. And in particular, I don't know if we've got a great formula for how you run the ball on Indiana in general, but Jordan Davison was Oregon's sort of power back. He was their leading rusher that day. He's their second leading rusher on the season, but he's got far and away the most rushing touchdowns on the team. He is out for the remainder at least he's out for this game. Reportedly, he's out for the remainder of the playoff, no matter what happens to Oregon tomorrow. So everybody's kind of dealing with maybe something they didn't have in that game in Eugene. And it's going to be fascinating to see what this looks like, because that question has been asked to basically everyone here in some way. How do you change something about how you approached that game in October so the other team's not ready for it? But I also think it's fascinating to kind of turn that conversation around. And I had this briefly with Brian Haynes. I talked about this briefly with Brian Haynes last night, Indiana's defensive coordinator. So much of the conversation about Indiana versus Oregon seems to be centered on the idea that it's a bad thing that these two teams have played, and that you're going to have to come up with all new game plans. And will you second guess yourself? Will there be paralysis by analysis? The flip side is you almost never, especially in the portal era, get such a clean look at a team you've already played film wise, that you get to watch a team and you have all the reference points you need of knowing their scheme, knowing their personnel, knowing your scheme, knowing your personnel. There's a lot less that maybe you have to question in your evaluation of your opponent going into this game. And I'll be fascinated to see how that, kind of plays in to the result.
Zach, as well as you can, I guess. And for those that don't know, when you cover a team, it is not our responsibility, and certainly some could say it's maybe not even the design, that you become like close personal friends with the subject matters you're covering. It happens sometimes naturally because you're around each other, you have respect for one another. How well have you gotten to know Curt Cignetti?
I would probably hesitate to overstate it. I think, what I would say about Curt Cignetti is I don't think he's ever been with anybody else in the media something different from what he is with us, if that makes sense. I don't think Curt Cignetti in the 2+ years now that he's been in Bloomington, and all I've observed of him, and obviously, in this job, you're obviously spending a lot of time around the people you cover, as you said. You're also spending a lot of time reading things, written things, listening to things said about the team you cover, because you're trying to keep up with the news, and chase the news, and compete for news and things like that. I don't think there's ever been a moment when I felt like Curt Cignetti was not with local media in, the Tuesday afternoon spring practice breakdown, post practice breakdown, what he's been with national media at the college football playoff semifinal. I think I've said for a long time with anybody who asks, and I don't know if I know him better than most people or not, that's probably more for him to say, but he certainly is he is who he is. And you never have to question whether or not you're getting kind of like Curt Cignetti's honest opinion of, an answer to your question, or what he thinks of your question, or, where you stand with him. And frankly, like it is, somebody who's been in this business obviously a long time, that's all I will really ever ask professionally of the people I cover.
Zach Osterman is our guest from the Indianapolis Star. He covers Indiana football. Reason I ask it is because, Cignetti just seems, I think we say this about people, Zach. Shane Steichen, when he got here, it was like, oh, man, he's just all ball. He's just all ball. Football. And that's fine, but you have to have the ability to also connect with and grow people and mesh personalities and mesh egos. What Cignetti has done to me is so fascinating because he's been able to do all of that. Is that because it's by design that he so properly vets players before they even arrive, where that meshing has already almost been done in his mind before having to verbalize it to a player?
Probably to a certain extent. I think there's also and I've discussed this a lot in the build-up to just the playoff and going through the Rose Bowl and now the Peach Bowl when people have asked. I think this staff has a remarkable ability to do two things that in all sort of walks of coaching life that sound very simple and really are very hard, which are, number one, to identify and understand where the intersection points are between your talent and your scheme. And number two, to be able to communicate and to teach what you need to get those players to those intersection points, so that they perform at their best. Because, and I don't know if you, like, obviously the coaching I have done is just primarily like Little Five and stuff is nowhere near what would be expected of a college football coach. But what you learn really quickly in coaching is, like, you will know a lot more. You will understand a lot better what you are teaching than the athletes you're teaching it to. And that will always be the case because you've seen more, you've experienced more, you've thought about it more. You're older, you're more mature, whatever. But it's not about what you know, it's about what you can effectively teach and effectively communicate. And if you can't do those things, it doesn't matter what you know. All the bright ideas that you have in your head don't matter, because when you ask someone to go out and execute those ideas in practice, and when I say in practice, I just mean on the field. I don't mean like in the physical structure of practice, but theory versus practice. It will fall down if you haven't been able to effectively teach people how to do it. Bryant Haynes said something recently about coaching. He said it's the greatest amount of impact with the least amount of words. And this staff's ability, and it starts certainly with Curt Cignetti and works its way down. And I think this is one of the reasons why he's kept so much of his staff. He's been so intentional about keeping so much of his staff together, is that this staff's ability, not just to identify that talent that you're talking about, the mentality necessary, the both physical and mental and emotional characteristics, required, but also to understand, once you get a hold of that player, whatever position they play, whatever you're going to ask them to do, this is how you prepare them for that. This is how you teach them that, so that when they go out on the field, they do so with supreme confidence that they are going to perform well, because they have every faith that you're not asking them to do something they can't do. And that sounds incredibly simple, but especially in a world where there is such a large gap between like a 19-year-old sophomore and a 23-year-old redshirt senior. And I think we saw some of that gap, frankly, in the Rose Bowl. And forgive me, I know it's a long-winded answer, but I think it's important to any conversation about the story of this Indiana team. The ability to do that is more than just scouting and film and looking at testing numbers or, watching what a player was capable of at his previous school. It is also about understanding, with having a really clear-eyed vision for what to do and how to get the most out of that player once he gets into your program. And I think that's, it's illustrated nowhere better than quarterback, where, Cignetti and Mike Shanahan have had 4 different starting quarterbacks in the last 4 years. All 4 of them have been all-conference players. I think 3 of them were conference players of the year, and 1 won a Heisman Trophy. And they were all slightly different quarterbacks. They all had their own strengths. But Indiana understood not just how to identify their talent before they got to wherever they met Cignetti and Shanahan and the project, but also what to do with them, how to build the offense around them, what to ask them to do and what not to ask them to do, what to compensate for in the way they change their scheme. That is representative of just really, really good coaching.
By the way, Zach, in the time that you've been on our radio show, and your colleagues I know have met, and I'm not – Eddie, did you happen to feel a breeze just a second ago? I don't know if you felt that or not. Zach, have you met Robin the Genie that stops by our show from time to time?
I don't think so, no.
Robin, that is correct, Zach. My name is Robin the Genie. I oftentimes allow you to make a prediction, and if it comes correct, I will pay you $1 million. Well, Robin owes Joel A. Erickson $1 million for saying Daniel Jones would be the Colts starter. Does he not, Eddie? Is that right?
I think so.
I promise I'd pay. I did have the beer ferry delivered to him. Okay, Robin, no problem. So Robin, I believe, has a word for you, Zach Osterman. Are you willing to take the advice of Robin the Genie?
Yes.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate your work in the Indianapolis Star. But I'd like to offer for you one genie bit of advice, which is don't be the world's biggest dumb blank word again and pick against Indiana because you got roasted for that after saying Alabama would win. So it is my belief you shall say that Indiana will beat the Ducks of Oregon. That's big time from Robin there because Robin doesn't usually follow through on things.
Well, he never offers advice either.
My advice, by the way, comes this time for free, young Zach. Please adhere to it. Okay. You're gonna follow his advice, Zach? You caught some heat for picking Alabama.
Yeah, I've already dropped. I've already dropped a prediction, and I've got Indiana 28, Oregon 23. It is very hard. And I know there will be, I believe me, I've seen it. And somebody asked me if people had stopped being mean on the internet. And I said, the last time people weren't mean on the internet was probably 5 years ago.
You're screwed now, though, man, because if they lose, it's your fault because you jinxed them.
I mean, if I had that kind of power, do you think I'd still be here? Like if I had the power to control even the fate of just one college football program, I'd be the one getting the $15 million contract right now, not Lane Kiffin. But you don't want to place too much stock in a game that was played 3 months ago. But on the other hand, I keep coming back to this idea. We have seen these teams play before. That is rare. That is unusual in college football to see two teams play twice in the same season. And while I know that rematches, that it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of who wins the rematch when it happens again, the trouble I have getting past Oregon is Indiana was just so comfortably the better team that day. Oregon, like there's been a lot of talk, for example, about how Oregon needs Indiana to make mistakes for Oregon to win this game. Indiana made mistakes that day. Oregon's only 2 touchdowns were a pick six and a busted coverage. Like Indiana made mistakes that day, made the kinds of mistakes that people are saying if they make them in this game, they will lose and Oregon will win. But Oregon lost that game by 2 scores at home, despite Indiana making exactly those kinds of mistakes. I think Oregon's going to struggle to run the ball, maybe even more consistently. At least if they don't, it will be the first time that we've seen a team with Oregon's current roster makeup able to consistently move the football on the ground on Indiana all season. Indiana was the team that constructed genuine touchdown drives in that game. Every one of Indiana's touchdown drives was at least 9 plays and was at least 75 yards. And that was in weather in Eugene, not in a domed stadium in Atlanta, in front of a crowd that I suspect is going to be very, very red and white. I'm not saying Oregon can't win. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be nip and tuck. But I'm saying if you're sitting here before the game and you're saying, who do you think can win this game? It is very difficult to find anywhere near as many reasons to pick Oregon as it is Indiana. It's like Indiana's got the 2% advantage in almost every matchup argument. And if you add that up, I think it adds up to Indiana winning by, I think I had 5 points, but give me anywhere from like 24-20 to 30-24, something in that range.
Zach, we appreciate the time. I'll let you get to the varsity, get a little taste of home, and then we will be reading your coverage of Indiana or Oregon and perhaps be talking to you shortly thereafter that as the Hoosiers are on their way to Miami Gardens. Best in terms of the travel and enjoying a little taste of home as well.
I'll do it. I'll be at Atlanta Breakfast Club bright and early tomorrow morning. Don't worry.
The ABC, as we like to call it, right? The Jackson 5 used to like that place. All right, Zach, appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Bob Kravitz going to join us. We're going to break down some of the things Chris Ballard said and didn't say. We'll do that in 10.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Tell you something interesting. And I'm just going to shoot this straight. This is fascinating to me. Doesn't bother me. I do find it fascinating. There are certain things, and I don't know what triggers it, on the X post Twitter, where, and I mentioned it before about when I sent a tweet complimenting an employee at AutoZone, where a bot gets a hold of it and just takes off. And the latest is, I realize that in social media sometimes sarcasm doesn't come through, but Chris Ballard has always built his resume on, or his philosophy on, it's about more than just the quarterback. Almost like I'm not saying he was trying to discredit Andrew Luck. He knows how good Andrew Luck was. But when he got here, because he wasn't responsible for Andrew Luck, he was responsible for all the pieces around Andrew Luck. So he was already laying the groundwork for, hey, if we win a lot of stuff, don't forget, I've got my part too. So all I'm saying is, based on that, if you have a season that goes south because your quarterback gets hurt, it's hard to say, well, it's about the one guy that went down. Well, no, you've already told me it's about more than the quarterback. I understand that Daniel Jones played very well. I mean, I think if you listen to this show enough, you know where I stand on it. But earlier today, when Chris Ballard said in a quote that we don't use injuries as an excuse, and then 30 seconds later he says, but if you look at the injury, right? I mean, listen to it right here. That too.
Never going to use health as an excuse. I mean, I don't think that's, like I said a minute ago, like the team you start with in August, it's never the same team you finish with in January. So, no, I will tell you this. Like, I think our defensive front, we've got to add some fuel to the front. And we've got to get younger. We've got to get faster, unequivocally, on defense. Offensively, we've got to be able to run it when we want to run it. And I will say that kind of when Daniel got hurt, it took away some things we could do from a mobility standpoint, which I think affected it, but that's something we'll dig into. But just off, our initial thinking, our defensive front, and we got to get faster, especially on defense.
Okay. So can't use health as an excuse, but then later maybe as an explanation, as more than an excuse. Maybe that's fair. But in terms of the defensive front, that is 100% on Ballard. There's no area of football that he has more tried to work on every year and preached more what he's going to get corrected than defensive front. But simply what I pointed out via social media that I thought he contrasted himself there, contradicted himself there. There was one response for Chris Ballard, and now I've got this thread of people that are all going after my critique of Chris Ballard, none of which follow me and none of which have ever posted about anything having to do with the city of Indianapolis or the Colts franchise ever before. It is a cesspool of robots. That's all. It's still a fun thing to do, but you got to weed through so much incredible crap to find anybody. But we didn't have to weed through anybody to find Bob Kravitz. He joins us next.
Barry and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, couple of things of note here real quick. First off, looks like Curt Cignetti may be getting a raise yet again. Not just the one that he had. If my understanding of this is correct, and that's always dangerous, but my understanding is that Cignetti had a clause in the contract that he had signed that allows for him to get a guarantee, I believe, of within the top three or the average of the top three salaries in college football. When Lane Kiffin went to LSU, that bumped up what the top three salaries were and made Ryan Day's $12.5 million, some $1 million above Cignetti, the benchmark for number three. And as a result, contractually speaking, he is then owed an additional $1 million, so that he is now going to be paid $12.5 instead of $11.5 million. There are multiple reports of that out there. And that sounds like absurd money, I realize, but the role of an institution is that it is an academic institution first. And you can say, well, then why does paying a football coach $13 million or $12.5 million help out your academics? The way it does it, look at Colorado. Look at Butler with Brad Stevens. Basketball, not football, I realize. But when you have a school, Clemson, I can tell you right now, as somebody who goes to Clemson games and the way that campus has changed, when you become an it school athletically, you increase the profile of the school where your applications for student entrant like triple. And when that happens, you are then thus allowed to be even more selective as to the academic criteria. Thus, you are bolstering the academic reputation of the school and the value of the degree for its graduates. That would be the explanation that I would give to you. Joining me now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, he is, of course, a friend of the program. BobKravitz.com is where you can read his column. Longtime Indianapolis sports writer. Bob, I'll get right to this. Chris Ballard's press conference earlier today. Your overall takeaway or impression?
Well, I went into it thinking, what the hell can he possibly say that he hasn't already said? I mean, you knew he was going to fall on his sword, and that's exactly what he did. I thought that he had to walk a tightrope because he doesn't want to use, the injuries as an excuse. But, when you lose your top two quarterbacks and your third one's got a knee, I mean, those are pretty good explanations if nothing else. So I thought that he rather deftly handled that element of it. You don't want to say the injuries derailed the season, but, I mean, let's be honest, injuries derailed the season.
I understand it. My thing has always been, Bob, and that's not inaccurate. And I would be willing to, and I still am willing to accept that, except for it is Chris Ballard, not me. Not you, not Eddie. It is Chris Ballard who is on record of saying in the past that football is about more than just one player or one position, and you have to build a roster that is not quarterback reliant.
Right.
So if that's the case, then you can't say, here's my best building job, and guess what? It was quarterback reliant.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that once they got the quarterback thing right, and I'm not convinced that they have as of yet. They were 7-1, 8-2. He said that stuff about the quarterback back when Andrew Luck was here. It's easy to say that it's not all about the quarterback when you have a guy like Luck, a generational talent. But clearly, you look at the teams in the playoffs, all of them have terrific starting quarterbacks. So he's in a weird position. I think he knows that he's very, very fortunate to still have a job.
Do you believe, Bob? Now, this is what I love, Bob. You and I, and maybe we should do it more on air instead of off air. Like we get into some deep, not conspiracy conversations, but you and I get into some deep left field conversations, right? If the situation was the exact same, and Carly Ursay-Gordon was 5 years into this, and I know that she's been around it for a long time. I get that. But there are a lot of things that go into the ascension to the top of the boardroom because of the sad and unfortunate passing of your father. But I'm talking about things like the business aspect of the estate tax, the sale of things, getting all ducks in a row from that. I mean, I can only imagine the intricacies of that. And the one area that can be kind of clean or have continuity to it would be the football operations in that first year. If this was year 5 of her ownership and her having navigated through all of the non-football stuff, do you believe she makes the same decision?
Probably not. I think it's reasonable to suspect that Carly and the sisters did not really look forward to doing a GM and coach search after their first year in charge. I think that's a question that, I mean, nobody's going to answer that, obviously. You heard Carly's press conference the other day, but, I'm not so sure about the estate taxes and all the other stuff and selling the Lake Maxentucky mansion has anything to do with it. I just think that, they'd like to be a little more established before they undergo a coach and GM search.
Which I think is understandable, right? I mean,
I do too.
I mean, and for that matter, I think if she would have come out and said, listen, fans, I know this is going to be opposite of what you want to hear, but I'm going to have to ask for your patience because right now I just need to have a little bit of continuity while I continue to assess. I think a lot of people would have said, I get it, right?
Yeah. But you're not going to hear that. I mean, they're not gonna say anything close to that. But I agree with you, and I do think that after just 1 year in charge, you want continuity, you want familiarity, and so I think she took kind of the easy way out. I realize it's the hard way out when you look at the fan anger, but I just don't think they were really emotionally prepared to do a whole new GM search and a coaching search. And you can, it's hard to argue that Ballard deserves another chance. I certainly can't. I wrote after week 16 or 17 that they need to blow up and start over, but I understand where Carly is coming from.
Okay. Allow this question then, Bob. Okay. Is there a chance that Carly Ursay-Gordon went with the status quo for right now because he's got a year left on his contract anyway, and because she also is aware of the fact that with no definitive starting quarterback coming back next year that is going to be known to be healthy in week 1, with no pass rush and no first-round pick the next 2 years, that she looked at it and went, this probably is the best I'm going to get right now?
Yeah, maybe so. And you look at how many openings there are in the league. She would have been competing with a lot of teams for the top talent, both as GM and coach. I don't think finances had a lot to do with it. Ballard's only got 1 year. I believe Steichen's got 2 years left. We're going to find out at the end of next year if they're not successful, whether they are joined at the hip or not. I would suspect not, or suspect they are. I think this is a playoffs or bust year for both of them. But, I think that's where it stands right now.
I'll be honest. I do like Steichen. I don't dislike Chris Ballard. I think people think I dislike Chris Ballard. I don't know Chris Ballard, right? I feel like the Ballard tenure has hit its ceiling, and there is not enough body of work evidence to indicate that is going to change. That's all I would say there. Steichen, I feel like, has kind of grown into, especially if Daniel Jones is healthy, a coach that, with the relationship he has with his quarterback, has learned on the job and made some errors, but I have confidence that he will continue to grow. I think Steichen offers a fairly promising future. What say you?
Yeah, I think we started to see the best of Shane Steichen this year, especially in terms of the way he worked so closely and so well with Daniel Jones. Um, I think it's easier to justify bringing back Steichen than it is bringing back Ballard, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think we've seen, I mean, 3 years is a long time in the National Football League, and you see how quickly other teams have torn down and rebuilt. And, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, it's, everybody knows that the Colts haven't made the playoffs in 9 years, and every other team in the AFC South has won it at least twice. That just can't continue. I think Steichen has a chance to be the right guy. I don't think he's a terribly good communicator. I don't know yet whether he's a leader of men. I don't know if he can finish the way they need to finish, but I think he's due the opportunity to try.
Bob, what did you think, before we get to Indiana football, what did you overall think of the two press conferences? Was there anything you took away from it that surprised you in terms of thought process, or either disappointed or encouraged you?
Well, I thought Carly, God bless her, she's trying, and I think she's very, very sharp and has, dived headfirst into this organization and done all the right things. But, she's not like her dad, and we can't expect her to be like her dad. And, speaking publicly and answering reporters' questions is not what she's, born to do. I thought it was a little clunky. At the same time, like I say, I give her grace on that. Ballard was exactly as I expected. I could have answered those questions for him, just write the column and, I mean,
just pull up I
was glad.
You could have just pulled up your files from last year, right?
From last year, the year before. That's why I was saying, going into this, I was like, what in the hell can he possibly say that he hasn't already said? I was glad to hear him say they need to get faster and younger at the linebacker spot.
Hey,
that was a good.
Bob, let's get into that, but because a couple of things jumped out right there with me. That would lead you to believe that what player might want to be calling Biff Ward?
Both Zaire and Jermaine Pratt.
Yeah.
Both. Yeah, I don't think either one of them covered himself in glory. Zaire had a lot of tackles, but in coverage, it's not so good. Not so good. So, you saw how teams shoot up the Colts in the middle of the field. Tight ends have historically had banner days against the Colts. You remember what McCaffrey did. And McCaffrey does that to a lot of people, but he was running free all day during that game. So I think they're going to change the linebackers. I think they're going to try and sign an edge rusher. I know Trey Hendrickson's getting up there in years, but for a year or two, hell, I'd give it a shot. He seems to be bullish on Latu. He thinks he has a chance that he's ascending, as it were. But boy, Kwity Paye has just been a disappointment on the other end.
Well, that's the thing is, he commented that they need to get better in their front four and in their rush, and I'm thinking, but that's been the area that he has. It almost has come at the cost of other areas of the team because you keep investing in that, right? I mean, that's the frustrating thing about it. And then Mooney Ward, I think it's all been everything, but they put a billboard up to let us know that Mooney Ward may call it a career. And if that's the case, Bob, as I keep saying, I hope everybody understands that that's the best situation for the health of that young man, and you simply pat him on the back and say, hey, man, great career, and thanks for giving it a go.
Yeah, I talked, a bunch of us talked to Charvarius the other day, and he certainly sounded like a guy who was going to come back, but one more concussion and he's out.
Right.
That was the impression that I got from talking with him. He said he was going to talk with his family. I guess one of his parents, maybe his father, told him he probably should give it up, hang it up. But that's so hard for a player to do. How old is he? 28 or something?
I know. Yeah. I mean, he's made a lot of money. He got a big contract, but yes.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said, I got generational wealth. I got everything I need out of the game. I've been a Pro Bowler, haven't won a Super Bowl, but, thinks he's got a possibility. I think he's going to come back. DeForest is definitely going to come back. He announced that on Instagram, which tells me I really need to get an Instagram account.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think Mooney's going to come back for a year, but or maybe longer. But I think it all depends on whether he can stay healthy.
By the way, I can tell you that if you click on the wrong thing on Instagram once, the algorithm picks it up, and then all of a sudden you're entertained for hours. You just don't want other people necessarily seeing what's going on. You know what I mean? Just
yeah.
No,
I actually set one up about 100 years ago when I was at WTHR or something, and I think I posted once.
Okay.
I don't know how it works.
Did you post your legs on a beach, taking time off, R&R, back next week? Okay.
I think it was actually a picture of a cold glass of beer at
Hell
the
yeah.
airport where I was on a layover
Hell
between Miami and Indianapolis.
In that case, you've got to use the airport codes if you really want to be authentic. MIA, arrow, IND, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. There you go.
Hey, speaking of Miami, Indiana is one win from there. If they are to beat Oregon, they would be playing for the national championship against either the Miami Hurricanes or Ole Miss. Your overall thoughts, Bob, on this, and we're past the point now. It's like Norman Dale to Hoosiers. We're past the big speech point, so we're past the point of talking about just how unbelievably incredible this is. I'm going to ask you a non-Indiana-Oregon question, okay?
Okay.
Has this run finally put the capper on, and I'm not saying killing the program, but has it finally awakened the Indiana fan base that it is a school that does not carry the same basketball cachet it once did?
Well, I think there's hope with Darren DeVries. Are you asking me, is it a football school now?
I realize this is a short-lived so far phenomenon,
right.
But they had a home game against Washington that might have had 9,000 people there this week.
Right. I do think this. If you gave Hoosier fans a choice of a national title in basketball and a national title in football, I think they would take basketball. Just because it's our lifeblood in this state. I think. What do you think?
I think you're right. Here's the thing: if you were to ask them right now, I think they would say
right now
basketball.
They say football.
Okay. 2 wins away. If you said okay, they can get this done right now. But I'm saying in a vacuum, like if you ask people if they don't win it, okay, let's say Oregon beats them or Miami beats them, and you ask them in 3 months. I think with truth serum, a lot would still say basketball because they're a little embarrassed that banner up there. It's the reality is now starting to kick into people of like, wait a minute, that most recent banner is almost as old as the 1940 banner was when it was won. Like that's uncomfortable to me. And I also think there's the mentality of, well, football, we're going to get one here in the next 5 years anyway. So I don't need to wish for that. It's just going to happen, right?
God, 1987. I remember that year. I could still see my toes. Oh, you'd be proud of me, Jake.
In an Instagram photo.
Yeah, you'd be proud of me though. I'm at Lifetime Fitness working out. I've lost 13 pounds. I know we're going off in a tangent here, but you'd be proud of me because I know
Lifetime's
you
my spot.
Are concerned. You are concerned about my health.
Well, Lifetime's my spot, and I'm happy to hear that. And you've lost 13 pounds. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a start. It's a deck chair off the Titanic.
You know what? Hey, you take that. By the way, I'm glad you said deck chair. I got concerned there for a split second. No, you got to take what you can get. Do they? Okay. Here's the thing. As you have turned things around now, Bob, and I'm happy to hear that. Honestly, that's where you and I really first met was at Lifetime Fitness, and our mutual heart issues. Does Indiana get this done?
Yeah, I think they're going to win the whole thing, Jake. I really do. I think with Ohio State out of the way, Georgia out of the way.
Those are the two I was worried about.
Yeah, those are the two that I thought could beat Indiana. Obviously, they beat Ohio State. And if Oregon is going to win, they're going to have to play a damn near perfect game, because I know one thing in my soul is that Indiana is not going to make mistakes. Indiana is not going to beat itself with turnovers, with penalties, with missed assignments. It's not going to happen because it hasn't happened all year. I mean, I was shocked. I think it was the Old Dominion game where they had a couple of bad run fits and they had a couple of long runs. And I think that made Sig absolutely crazy. But no, I think they're going to get it done. I really do. I think it's a field goal game tomorrow, and I think they'll get the best of. I think Miami's going to win that game tonight. So I think IU Miami, and I think they win it.
Listen, Miami's defense is legit, right? I mean,
They are.
Miami's
But so
defense is
IU's.
nasty. No, I know. No question. I mean, no question. I think Indiana Miami would be a fascinating matchup because it's defense. The two front fours look like the Spider-Man gif, right? And then you go advantage Indiana because even though Beck's a great quarterback, but I like the versatility better of Indiana's offense.
Yeah, when I look at big games, I just ask a simple question: who's got the better quarterback? And Carson Beck is a nice quarterback, nice player, but Fernando is playing at a whole different level right now. So I think, and we've seen him in the clutch, and whatever you think of it, he's got the clutch gene. So I think they're gonna win on a late field goal. Fernando's gonna lead them down the field, and I think they play Miami for the national championship.
All right, Bob, we will be reading about all of it in your columns, bobkravitz.com, where you can see that. You will soon find him apparently on Instagram, and then you too can see his toes. So we look forward to all of that.
And Lifetime Fitness.
And Lifetime Fitness, that's right. I will see you there. Bob, I appreciate the time as always. Can we still say Happy New Year? What's the grace period on Happy New Year? Is it a week or
It's January 7th. What's today?
I think it's the 8th, isn't it? I've always thought this. Or what about this? Or the first time that you see the person in January.
Yeah, no, January 7th is hard and fast. That's from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
All right.
I think he's got that right. January 7th.
Fair
That's
enough.
the cutoff date.
All right, well, I'm a day late and $1 short. What do you know? All right, we'll see you, Bob. Bob Kravitz joining us.
Buddy.
Java House, Peel and Pour, Gas Line. We got to give some credit here, okay? I got to give some credit to Cam Blankenship, Nick Lopez, Ken Myers. What's Phelan's last name?
Watson.
I always think of Gerard Phelan from Boston College. Phelan Watson. Who am I missing here, Eddie? I know there's got to be a couple of others.
Devin Duncan.
And
some of the other engineers that we've had contracted. I don't know all their names either, but
we've had, and it has not been fun, admittedly, and you folks have noticed it. We've had a heck of a time since moving in here getting right the phone line clarity. And a lot of that came from beyond the control within this building of stuff well beyond my intellectual capability, broadband width, Wi-Fi, etc. And they developed a new system for us that is beyond the phone line itself, which is basically a studio-type auxiliary line. And while we are not able to use that still on a 100% basis, and while still the phone lines are at about 70%, we have had issue in the last couple of weeks where it would pop up at the helium would pop in or things like that. And in no way, shape, or form is any of that related to the level of competence of the people working on it, but rather the level of goods or materials delivered. And it takes a perseverance, but it also takes a professionalism and a maturity to be able to just stay the course and work through it. And those guys and gals have continued to do that. And I appreciate all of the listeners that have also understood and had a laugh along with us at times, admittedly, frustrating absurdity of it, but also knowing that it was not the culprit of the lack of someone's execution. So Bob sounded great. Zach sounded great. Anthony Thompson on the phone line sounded significantly better. So it is appreciated. Let's hope that does continue, but it is appreciated, and I do absolutely Appreciate those of you that have ridden it out and stuck with us throughout the course of the transition itself. All right, back to some of the things that Chris Ballard did say. We'll let you hear from him, and we'll do it next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Great song. I say it every time you play it. Miami and Ole Miss tonight. Semifinals, college football. Pacers, Hornets, 7 o'clock. Pregame at 6:30 right here on this radio station.
Who you got? Ole Miss? The U?
I'll tell you, I think that Miami defense is pretty stout. I'll go with Miami.
Yeah, I'm curious on how many coaches are on the sideline for Ole Miss.
I mean, that's the thing, too, right? It's just...
I haven't followed it closely, but I know there were more coaches apparently that were supposed to leave this week for LSU. But
it'd be an incredible story for Ole Miss. But
I love the story of Trinidad Chambliss as well. That dude's a bowler.
I went to Ole Miss to a game last year. It was great. People were great. Great environment. Chris Ballard spoke earlier today. We played some of that for you. I recall years ago when I was doing the morning show with Kevin and Mark Dykton and asking Chris Ballard the area that was the most difficult for him to kind of just put his head around. And, you know, with anything that you do, there's always that one thing. It's just kind of that mental hurdle. And so I was asking him, what's that one thing that is, in fact, kind of your mental hurdle? And he was pretty open about the fact that one thing that was the mental hurdle was depth at that time. And it sounds, when assessing this particular team and overlooking things, like that's still something that Chris Ballard is working on.
That's something Shane and I and Carly and all our staff, we've got to dig into, of how to finish, how to handle adversity. I play a big role in that with the roster, you know, making sure they have enough depth and competent players to give us a chance to win. But I really don't believe. I mean, we were playing as good a football. And, like, if you look down the stretch, I mean, you know, one-score games, 2-7 in one-score games. And you got to find a way to fight through that and win those games. And usually the teams that make the least amount of mistakes in those games that win, don't lose it. You know, give yourself a chance by making the other team have to earn it.
Now, another big question. Do they have depth at quarterback? Well, you know that Daniel Jones, and it was pretty clear that Daniel Jones is, and I don't mean that begrudgingly, but it's pretty clear Daniel Jones is the guy that they are hoping is going to be their quarterback next year. They still have to sign him. He's got to be healthy. And then you have the Anthony Richardson situation. And Chris Ballard was simply asked where things stand with his former first-round quarterback pick.
I was really happy with Anthony. I think you knew that even after we named Daniel Jones the starter. I mean, unfortunately for Anthony, he's had some really bad luck. You know, year one, he hurts his shoulder, has to spend the whole next year rehabbing, comes back, kind of an up and down, but saw positives, but also some negatives. And then, you know, goes into our training camp, and I thought he had made tremendous strides. I did. I thought Anthony had made great strides. At the end of the day, we went with Daniel. Just felt he was the right person at the time for the job. But saying that, Anthony was making really good strides. I'll tell you this about Anthony. He's a great teammate. He's a great teammate. And never sulked, never complained, was doing a great job as a backup quarterback. And then he has a freak accident in the locker room. I think time will tell. In terms, it was great to get him back out to practice, you know, for that 3 weeks, so at least get him back involved in the team and moving again. But he's got to still work through the vision he has, and we'll see what the future holds there. But, you know, a little bit of bad luck. We'll kind of see going forward, you know, how that ends up playing out. A lot of it's going to deal with his health, too.
So, in other words, Anthony Richardson has probably played his last game as a Colt. And I'm not trying to be overly pessimistic. That's just the reality. Because a big part of that is between the two of Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, and Chris Ballard obviously has ultimate say, but I think Ballard has been the bigger Richardson supporter. Steichen seems totally out on him. Just seems totally out on him. And that's number one. And then number two, the if the eye is still in vision is still an issue, that's obviously of some concern. I do want to clarify one thing in defense of Anthony Richardson. I think you can be a great teammate and not be a great leader. If you're a quarterback, you've got to be a great leader and a great teammate. Sometimes being a leader, there's two kinds of leaders. There's the Peyton Manning leader that I've talked about, where I've talked to guys that were in the Pro Bowl when Peyton Manning was there, and they're in Honolulu, and everybody's sitting around and they're joking in the pool and, acting sophomoric, and then Manning rounds the corner and everybody would stop. Well, what's his mood? And these are all pro players that don't even play on his team in the regular season. But Manning just had that it factor where when he walked in, he was the alpha that everybody waited to see what was happening. And some people are just born with that inherent leadership. When I went to Claiborne Farms, where Secretariat was a retired racehorse, and they told me that Secretariat in his stable, in his running pasture, there were 3 other horses usually that were there with him, rotated through, younger horses. And younger, but retired also. And when it was time to feed, nobody would eat until Secretariat got up and walked over to the bale. There's just a natural leadership. Those horses aren't sitting there looking at the sporting news at the results like, you see his 73 can Belmont time? You can just see it. You can feel it. That's that kind of leadership. Then there's the leadership of getting in guys' grills, letting people know that you're not going to accept failure. And there's the leadership of by example. I'm in the build. I don't think Daniel Jones comes off as an overly vociferous individual, but I do think that he probably is going through, he's the guy that when everybody's walking up the field at 5, he's grabbing 2 tight ends and saying, we did not run those routes right. We got to do that again. Our timing's off. And guys are walking over and they're looking back and they're like, man, like he's still working. And that just leads by example. I don't know that Anthony Richardson ever knew of or maybe even had example of those things to know that that's what was expected. So he maybe wasn't a great leader, but that's not to say he can't be a great teammate. A great teammate is one that sets the ego aside and just says, okay, this is what you need me to do and what you're asking me to do. That's what I'm going to do. Now, Ballard did go on to say one more thing, just in terms of adversity. Overcoming adversity, which this team had to do this year, which is part of how they ended up ending the year with 7 straight losses.
They fought. I mean, look, y'all go to games. I thought the locker room, staff, organization, they fought. There was no quit in this team at any point. Even when we started having injuries, there was no quit. And I do think, it's funny because the toughness is a fair question. I think handling adversity, I don't think we were non-tough, that's for sure. But handling adversity better, I think that's a better way to put it.
They are tough, right?
Yeah, we learned that in the last 2 weeks, Jake.
They are tough. They
got a lot of fight.
They go in, they get
fight.
zestfully clean, they clean things up, they go out, and they fight. They
And we know Carly's pissed.
That's right.
Carly's pissed, Jake.
Not at the way they smell, but at the lack of the result of the fight, right?
Yeah, she's not happy.
Hey, Jake, joke too, probably for me. Chris Ballard is clearly trying to sell Anthony Richardson to the rest of the league.
That's a fair point, too.
That is fair. Very fair. I just felt like there wasn't much that was said that we hadn't heard before. And the conclusion I would have on the Chris Ballard press conference from today would come from when James Boyd, and I think we have it here, when James Boyd asked him to summarize what have been the high points in his tenure. What have been the things that he really hangs his hat on? What are the things that he's most proud of? What are the things that have been the resume top thing for Chris Ballard when he looks at his tenure as the general manager of the Colts?
Look, I thought we started out pretty well under some pretty adverse conditions, both in 18, the 1-5 start, the bounce back to go to the playoffs, beat a good Houston team, go and lose in Kansas City. And then coming back in 19 where we had the youngest team in football, lots of space from guys under contract, a franchise quarterback, and then when Andrew retired, it kind of changed the dynamic. And then the rebound in 20 and have a really good football team. 21, I thought, was every bit as good as those two other teams. We were, if you think back on it, we were 9-6. We had gone to Buffalo and beat a really good Buffalo team pretty hard. I think we beat 5 playoff teams that year, and I think it was all kind of in a consecutive, like after the 1-4 start, we got on a pretty good roll. So I do think there are some positives to build upon. And if you look back to 23, we lose a tight game to Houston to win a division. I mean, we've, that's the things that, like, I look back and some of the stuff we've had to overcome, but at the end of the day, we've not finished. I mean, we've had these, in 2021, we're 9-6. We win one of the last 2. We're in the playoffs. 23, we win the last game. We win the division. Last year, at the end, we go to New York and lay an egg. This year, we have a chance, and, we lose. We're 8-2, and we lose 7 in a row.
Here's the thing I have with that. Ezekiel Elliott, Julio Jones, Drew Brees, J.J. Watt, Shaq Leonard. You know what those guys have in common? They were all pros in 2018. Now they're off raising families, doing TV, whatever else. That's a lifetime ago in the NFL. And while I understand he was asked about the totality of his time, the challenge is that all of the good points that Chris Ballard brought up, all of the positives and all of the high marks in a league that stands for not for long were forever ago. Forever ago. There are guys playing in the NFL right now that all they know of Andrew Luck is that he's the kind of goofy dude that was doing a sideline interview when Stanford got a fumble recovery for a touchdown. That's it. I mean, they know he was a player, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, he's been out of the league a while. It's time to move on from the 18-19 and the accomplishments of 2020. That's a lifetime ago. And when it is a problem if you are asked about significant high water, high mark moments in the NFL for any franchise, and you can't come up with something that's within the last era of the contracts, the a rookie contract level era within the last 4 years, that's a problem. And it's particularly a problem when it is the same diagnosis year after year after year. That's the frustration, and that's the concern. Simple as that. And if you want to know why people feel like the Colts needed to make a change in terms of their general manager or their leadership, it's simply because the expiration date seems to come 3 weeks early on their seasons for the last 4 years. Not my words, his. And it's a 17-week season. That's my issue.
on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JMV has arrived. It is the crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com. The website, 317-353-2141 is the telephone number. John, you got a big show lined up, I assume?
I'm going to define juju for everybody. Do you still have the juju? You know, I don't even know where to begin on that. You know what I mean? Have you been as good as necessary at your job, right? Who gives a damn about the juju or the motivation? What was meant by that? And what Chris Ballard said earlier today, was it, are you still motivated? You sure as hell should be motivated, right? You're the most fortunate guy in the history of the NFL to this point.
And I swear, John, I kid you not, we'd have to go back and look at it. I thought he started last year's press conference by saying the exact same thing.
Listen, like 4 out of the last 5 have been that way. So, seriously, you look at the landscape of the NFL. Where does he rank among the most fortunate that you can recollect?
Oh, I mean,
this guy's going into 10 years with
a playoff win.
It's
70,
incredible.
78, and 1.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to, John, when he was asked what are the high mark moments, and everything he talked about was 18, 19, and like 21.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
the whole NFL not for long thing no longer, it doesn't apply here, does it? It's
no
like
question.
forever.
No question.
Yeah.
You know,
No doubt forever league here.
You're right.
It's a head scratcher. It is. I mean, one of these days we're just going to have to get used to it. But going into this year, you just kind of wonder how you can continue, even knowing what you know, crossing your fingers and hoping that everything works out. But hey, you going to watch Miami and Ole Miss later on tonight?
We were just talking about it. I think Miami's defense. Well, I'm going to be, by the way, 5 until 7.
Yes.
Axel's up at the garage. I will be there with Mick Olcher and our friends at Zinc.
Where exactly is Axel's?
It's in the garage there in the Bottle Works.
Oh, I love Bottle Works. I love Bottle Works.
Right there.
Yes.
901 Carrollton is technically the address.
Well done right there. Now,
yeah,
I always thought, is the new Circle Center thing, I always thought the people that bought and did Bottle Works bought.
I think that's right.
And what are they calling it? Something odd. What's the odd name of what's going to be Circle Center now?
Yard something, right?
Yeah. Motivational yard or.
That sounds right.
Multifaceted yard.
In there or something. I don't know, but yes. But that's not. But here's the thing. That's going to be like 2028 or something, right? Is it going to be 4 or 5 years from now?
Yeah, there's no telling.
Chris Ballard will still be there.
Chris Ballard.
Is that where
Chris Ballard will be with
Chris Ballard will hold his press conference there.
He'll be drafted number 1 overall again.
But,
we really believe in him.
He just said it's 2 years away. Eddie just reminded me it's 2 years away. I thought when they announced that it was like a 4 or 5 year project. So that would be like 30 or 31. I mean, honestly, I think it's
innovation.
Innovation
station. 2028 is only 2 years away.
That sounds like you'd be playing Cuba.
No.
An innovation station.
Hold on, let me clarify. You are correct, Eddie. I was off in my math when I said 28 because when they first announced it, I think they said it was going to be, once they started it, a 4 to 5 year project. And they announced that like in 24. And so I thought, but I think now it's like 2030 is before we see it, I think.
In closing, who's on with me tomorrow? Fred Khalil.
Really?
Remember Fred Khalil?
Yeah, I
Wish
sat
TV
next to
Channel
Fred
8.
Khalil. Saw him in the Super Bowl, the Ray Lewis Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 34 in Atlanta.
The Dirty Birds.
No, it was.
No, it wasn't?
It was.
No, that's when he got in trouble. Yeah.
Titans Rams.
You got it right.
Titans Rams, and Ray Lewis got in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fred Khalil was down there. Great dude. He's from Bloomington, right?
I guess Dan Huber, Dan Huber said that he was a walk-on linebacker at IU.
I think that's right.
So, and he's going to be down there going to the game. He's retired since down in Atlanta, but he's going to the game. And we're going to talk to Fred Khalil tomorrow.
Awesome. That's awesome. All right, John's up next. We will be back with you at noon tomorrow. I thank you for listening to Query & Company.